Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Expensive Coins History channel. Have you ever imagined that two tiny Roosevelt dime coins, coins most people would ignore in pocket change, could secretly be worth more than a luxury mansion? One sold for an unbelievable $121,000. The other shocked collectors at a staggering $144,000. And the terrifying part is this. Millions of Americans may have touched these coins without ever realizing what they were holding. Tonight, we uncover the hidden mystery behind the 1972 Roosevelt Dime and the legendary 1966 Roosevelt Dime. A story filled with rare minting secrets, mysterious errors, disappearing high-grade survivors, and collectors willing to spend life-changing money for just one perfect example. But before we begin, if you love rare coins, hidden treasure stories, and valuable discoveries hiding in everyday pocket change, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next coin sitting in your drawer could change your life forever. The year was 1972. America was changing fast. Gas prices were climbing. The Vietnam War still haunted headlines. Families across the country struggled to adapt to a rapidly changing economy. And during that turbulent period, billions of coins were flowing through the American financial system every single day. Most people never looked twice at a dime. After all, it was only 10 cents. Too small to matter. Too common to become valuable. Or so everyone believed. But deep inside the Denver Mint, something extraordinary was happening. Machines thundered day and night. Metal blank planchets moved through giant industrial presses. Workers rushed to meet overwhelming production demands. And in the middle of that chaos, a tiny Roosevelt dime was born, a coin that decades later would become one of the most talked about modern dimes in the entire collecting world. The 1972 Roosevelt dime. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Franklin D. Roosevelt faces left on the front. The familiar torch, olive branch, and oak branch appear on the reverse. Nothing about it screams fortune. Nothing about it looks legendary. And that is exactly what makes this story so dangerous for collectors. Because the most valuable coins in history often hide behind ordinary appearances. Millions of people have seen this dime. But only a handful truly understand what separates a normal one from a specimen capable of bringing enormous money. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of dimes in 1972. Most entered circulation immediately. They passed through restaurants, gas stations, supermarkets, banks, and vending machines. People dropped them into pockets. Children lost them under couches. Workers tossed them into coffee cans. Nobody imagined that one specific version would someday become a collector obsession. But over time, something strange began happening. Professional grading companies started seeing an unusual pattern. High-grade examples of the 1972 Roosevelt dime were incredibly difficult to locate. Not just rare, extremely rare. Especially coins with flawless surfaces, blazing luster, razor-sharp strike details, and strong eye appeal. Collectors soon realized a shocking truth. Although millions existed, very few survived in truly pristine condition. And that changed everything. Because in the coin world, rarity alone does not create enormous value. Condition creates legends. The difference between an average circulated dime and a nearly perfect specimen can mean the difference between 10 cents and a six-figure payday. That reality sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Suddenly, rolls of old dimes were opened across America. Collectors searched through jars. Dealers inspected bank-wrapped rolls. Investors began hunting for the elusive high-grade survivors. But finding one proved almost impossible. Why? Because the Denver Mint in the early 1970s faced intense production pressure. Coins were struck rapidly. Dies deteriorated quickly. Many dimes left the mint with weak strikes, bag marks, scratches, or dull surfaces. Even uncirculated coins often contained imperfections from rough handling. So when a truly exceptional specimen appeared, collectors noticed immediately. And then came the auction that stunned the hobby. A spectacular 1972 Roosevelt dime with nearly impossible quality entered the spotlight. Experts examined every microscopic detail. The strike was sharp. The surfaces were astonishingly clean. The luster exploded under light. This was not an ordinary coin anymore. It was a survivor, a miracle of preservation. a modern rarity hiding in plain sight for decades. Bidding escalated rapidly. Collectors fought aggressively. And when the final hammer fell, the numismatic world froze in disbelief. The tiny 10-cent coin reached an incredible value of $121,000. For many outside the hobby, it sounded insane. How could a dime become worth more than luxury cars? But seasoned collectors understood perfectly. Because perfection is rare. And true perfection among heavily mass-produced coins can become almost mythical. The story became even more fascinating as experts studied why so few elite examples survived. Many believe most original mint rolls were mishandled early. Others suspect storage conditions damaged countless coins over the years. Tiny contact marks invisible to ordinary people instantly destroy top grading potential. Even the smallest imperfection can slash value dramatically. That means a coin sitting unnoticed in a drawer for decades could appear beautiful to the naked eye, yet still fail to qualify as elite. Only a microscopic handful reached the highest levels. And those few become treasures. As word spread, ordinary Americans began checking their pocket change again. Some searched old piggy banks inherited from grandparents. Others opened forgotten jars hidden in closets. Stories emerged online about people rediscovering old Roosevelt Dimes after decades. The dream of finding hidden treasure suddenly felt real again. Because unlike ancient gold coins locked inside museums, Roosevelt Dimes once circulated everywhere. That possibility creates excitement unlike anything else in collecting. The idea that fortune could still be hiding in plain sight. And the Roosevelt dime already carried emotional importance long before massive auction prices arrived. The coin honors President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the most influential leaders in American history. After Roosevelt's death in 1945, the nation mourned deeply. The dime was redesigned in his memory because of his connection to the March of Dimes campaign, which fought polio. For millions of Americans, the Roosevelt dime became more than currency. It symbolized resilience, leadership, survival through hardship. And over the decades, generations handled these dimes without realizing some would later achieve legendary status. The 1972 D represents something especially fascinating in modern coin collecting. It proves valuable treasures are not limited to centuries-old coins. Even relatively modern pocket change can become astonishingly valuable under the right conditions. That realization changed how many collectors viewed ordinary coins forever. Suddenly, every date mattered. Every mint mark mattered. Every tiny detail mattered. People started examining luster, strike quality, toning, and surface preservation with new intensity. Because somewhere out there, another elite survivor could still exist. Perhaps hidden inside an old collection. Perhaps sitting forgotten in a family safe. Perhaps resting unnoticed inside a dusty coin album. And this mystery fuels the obsession. No one knows exactly how many truly elite 1972 D Roosevelt dimes survive today. Population numbers remain incredibly small at the highest grading levels. And as years pass, finding untouched examples becomes even harder. Coins are damaged, lost, cleaned improperly, or spent unknowingly. Every disappearing specimen makes surviving gems even more desirable. That scarcity keeps collector demand alive, and demand creates extraordinary prices. But there is another reason collectors become emotional about coins like this. These coins connect people to time itself. Imagine where a 1972 D Roosevelt dime may have traveled. Perhaps it passed through New York during the economic struggles of the 1970s. Maybe a soldier carried one overseas. Maybe a child bought candy with it decades ago. Maybe it sat silently in a cash register while history unfolded around it. Coins survive generations. They witness human stories silently. And sometimes, against impossible odds, one survives in nearly perfect condition. That survivor becomes priceless. As collectors competed for the finest known examples, the 1972 D Roosevelt dime transformed from ordinary pocket change into a modern icon. Not because of gold, not because of silver, but because rarity and perfection collided. And when those two forces meet inside the coin world, astonishing things happen. Today, serious collectors study this dime carefully. They examine strike sharpness near Roosevelt's hair. They inspect the torch details on the reverse. They search for blazing original mint luster untouched by cleaning. And they pray to discover that magical combination capable of creating extraordinary value. Most never will. But hope keeps the hunt alive. That hope is what drives collectors into flea markets, estate sales, auctions, and dusty antique shops every weekend. Because one discovery can change everything. And somewhere in America, another forgotten Roosevelt dime may still be waiting. Waiting to shock its owner. Waiting to rewrite someone's future. Waiting to become the next legendary auction headline. But the story does not end here. Because another Roosevelt dime would emerge from an even stranger era in American coin history. A coin surrounded by mystery, unusual production quality, and collector fascination unlike almost anything else in the series. And decades later, one example would explode to an astonishing $144,000. The legendary 1966 Roosevelt Dime. The year was 1966. America stood in the middle of enormous change. Televisions filled homes with breaking news every night. The space race captured imaginations across the country. The Vietnam War intensified. And ordinary Americans carried coins every single day without realizing that one particular Roosevelt dime from this chaotic era would someday become one of the most shocking modern treasures in U.S. coin collecting history. The 1966 Roosevelt Dime. At first glance, it looks simple, small, ordinary, forgettable. But hidden beneath that ordinary appearance lies one of the most fascinating stories in modern numismatics. Because this coin was born during a time when the United States Mint faced enormous pressure. Coin shortages had become a national problem. Americans were hoarding silver coins after the government removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters in 1965. People feared older coins would become valuable. And they were right. As silver disappeared from circulation, the mint rushed desperately to produce enough replacement coins for the entire country. Production exploded. Speed became more important than perfection. And during this frantic period, the Roosevelt dime of 1966 entered circulation by the millions. But something unusual happened. Unlike many earlier U.S. coins, the 1966 dime carried no mint mark. The government had temporarily removed mint marks from coins between 1965 and 1967 in an attempt to discourage collectors from hoarding special issues. Officials believe collectors searching for rare mint marks worsened the national coin shortage. So every 1966 Roosevelt dime looked nearly identical. No tiny d, no small s, nothing to separate one mint from another. To ordinary people, that made the coin feel even more common, even more invisible. And that invisibility would become the greatest deception of all. Because while billions of people ignored these dimes for decades, elite collectors eventually discovered a terrifying reality. Finding a truly flawless 1966 Roosevelt dime was unbelievably difficult. The coins were mass-produced under stressful conditions. Dies were down quickly. Strikes often appeared weak. Surface marks covered many examples before they even left mint bags. Workers handled coins rapidly to keep up with national demand. As a result, pristine survivors became extraordinarily rare. Most coins from that era entered circulation almost immediately. They clinked together in cash drawers, scratched against other coins, fell onto sidewalks, sat inside vending machines. Everyday use slowly destroyed their original beauty. And because nobody considered them valuable at the time, few people bothered preserving them carefully. That mistake would later haunt collectors. Because decades later, grading experts began noticing something remarkable. At the highest condition levels, the 1966 Roosevelt dime became almost impossible to locate. Not rare in average condition, rare in perfection. And in the world of coins, perfection changes everything. Tiny details suddenly become enormously important. The brilliance of mint luster, the sharpness of Roosevelt's hair, the smoothness of the fields, the absence of microscopic contact marks. One small flaw can destroy elite value instantly. That brutal grading reality turned the 1966 Roosevelt dime into a modern battlefield for serious collectors. Then came the discovery that transformed this coin into legend. A breathtaking specimen surfaced. Experts immediately realized they were seeing something extraordinary. The strike quality looked exceptional. The surfaces appeared astonishingly clean. The The luster radiated with almost unbelievable intensity. This was not merely an old dime anymore. It was a survivor from one of the most chaotic production periods in modern U.S. mint history. A coin preserved against impossible odds. Professional graders studied every microscopic inch carefully. Collectors waited anxiously. And when the coin achieved its elite grade, the collecting world erupted with excitement. Because coins at that level almost never appear. Auction houses recognized the opportunity instantly. The coin entered the market surrounded by enormous anticipation. And then something unforgettable happened. Bidding exploded. Collectors battled aggressively for ownership. Prices climbed higher and higher as the room realized this was no ordinary Roosevelt dime. This was one of the finest known survivors of an entire era. When the auction finally ended, the results stunned everyone watching. The tiny 1966 Roosevelt dime reached an astonishing value of $144,000 for 10 cents. A coin millions of Americans once ignored completely. A coin that passed through grocery stores and gas stations unnoticed. Now transformed into a six-figure treasure. The news shocked people outside the collecting world. Many could not understand how modern pocket change could become so valuable. But experienced numismatists understood the truth immediately. Because rarity is powerful. Condition is powerful. But together, they create legends. And the 1966 Roosevelt dime had become exactly that. A legend hiding in plain sight. As the story spread, collectors across America began searching old jars and forgotten boxes again. Families reopened dusty coin albums stored in attics. Estate sales suddenly attracted new attention. People who once ignored dimes now inspected every date carefully under bright lights. Because hope had returned. The hope that treasure might still exist inside ordinary change. And that hope is one of the strongest forces in all collecting. The Roosevelt Dime series already carried emotional meaning for many Americans. Franklin Roosevelt symbolized strength during some of the darkest years in U.S. history. The Great Depression, World War II, economic struggle, national recovery. His image on the dime connected generations of Americans to those powerful historical memories. But the 1966 dime carried another layer of fascination. It represented survival during a unique moment in American coinage history. The transition away from silver. The nationwide coin shortage. The desperate push for mass production. Every scratch and imperfection on surviving coins reflected the chaos of that era. And that is why flawless examples became almost mythical. Because they should not have survived so perfectly. Yet somehow, a tiny handful did. And those survivors became modern treasures. Collectors today study the 1966 Roosevelt dime obsessively. They inspect strike sharpness under magnification. They analyze mint luster. They search for untouched original surfaces. And they know the odds are against them. Because every year, more high-grade examples disappear forever. Some are damaged accidentally. Others are cleaned improperly by inexperienced owners. Some vanish into private collections and may never return to the market for decades. That shrinking supply only increases collector desire. And desire drives astonishing prices. But perhaps the most powerful part of this story is psychological. The 1966 Roosevelt dime proves something extraordinary. Great treasure does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in silence. Sometimes it waits quietly for decades while the world overlooks it completely. And then one day, collectors finally recognize what was there all along. That transformation fascinates people. The idea that an ordinary object can suddenly become extraordinary. That history can hide inside something small enough to fit in your hand. That fortune can exist where nobody thinks to look. This is why rare coin collecting continues to captivate millions worldwide. Not just because of money, but because every coin carries mystery. Every coin carries history. Every coin carries survival. And sometimes, one carries unimaginable value. Imagine how many 1966 Roosevelt dimes were spent carelessly over the years. Dropped into vending machines. Lost beneath car seats. Thrown into junk drawers. Ignored by generations. Yet somewhere among those billions of ordinary coins, a microscopic number survived almost untouched. Those survivors became legends. And legends obey different rules. Ordinary dimes buy almost nothing. Legendary dimes buy dreams. Today, collectors still search endlessly for elite Roosevelt dimes from the 1960s and 1970s. Some hunt through bank rolls late into the night. Others travel to coin shows across the country. Many spend years building complete collections while hoping to discover one extraordinary coin capable of changing everything. Because stories like the 1972 D and the 1966 Roosevelt Dimes prove that miracles sometimes happen in the coin world. Not often, but enough to keep the dream alive. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Right now, somewhere in America, another forgotten Roosevelt dime may still be hiding. Inside an old piggy bank. Inside a family inheritance. Inside a dusty coin jar no one has opened for years. Waiting silently. Waiting for discovery. Waiting to shock the world again. One tiny coin. 10 cents in face value. Yet worth more than many people earn in years. The 1972 D Roosevelt dime reaching $121,000. The 1966 Roosevelt dime climbing to an unbelievable $144,000. Two ordinary-looking coins. Two extraordinary stories. And a reminder that history, rarity, and fortune sometimes hide in the smallest places imaginable. So the next time you receive a dime in your change, take a closer look. Because you may not be holding 10 cents. You may be holding a hidden piece of American history worth an absolute fortune.